If born shining here, born shining. I'm born shining. You're born shining. We're all born shining. Don't let nobody tell you otherwise. Want to give a shout out to Raw, Universal Life Force, great creator, spirit which moves through all things. Want to give a shout out to Raw. Want to give a shout out to the archangels and descended masters, ancestors and crossover loved ones, star brothers and sisters, Pachamama, Father Sky, all my ancestors and crossover loved ones, all my invisible helpers, friends, known and unknown, seen and unseen, the chosen ones, and all the star seeds light workers and anybody else who's working to raise the frequency of humanity and the planet. And I'm re-recording this video because I'm just going to do it a little bit quicker and a little bit better. But I've been doing this breath work journey through Soma breath work. It's the 21-day awakening um, experience, journey, transformation, and it's going awesome. I highly recommend it. I definitely am going to be adding breath work to my coaching repertoire as soon as possible. Um, but I just wanted to share this profound experience that I've had. I'm pretty much today's the end of the first week. So I've been through the first week of this breath work journey, and it has been amazing. Highly recommend it for anyone who wants to take more control over their, I would say, your mindset more so anything. Getting more oxygen in your body is going to benefit you in a lot of ways. Um, but ultimately, I think what we're what we're after is um, the ability to navigate our emotions. I mean, me as an intuitive person, wanting to develop um, psychic skills and my intuition to on a higher level. Um, meditation is great, um, and at the same time, for me, especially after this first week, one of the experiences that I'm going to share with you, I think that it's very very necessary component to achieving higher levels of intuitive ability. Um, reaching your potential really is what I'm talking about. And so I was, the first couple of days I was doing the breath work, everything was going great. I mean, there's been no downsides, but well, not but there's been no downsides. And one of the things that I noticed when I was going through this these breathwork practices is that you do a series of breathing, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then when that cycle is coming to an end, what you do is you exhale completely and you hold your breath, and you hold your breath for however long, I don't know, a couple minutes, and then you take a big breath in and you hold your breath again. And when I when I got to that part of of the the experience, I was noticing, especially for the first couple of days, I was noticing that my legs were kind of twitching, and I wasn't sure. I was curious, like, why is this happening? And I had the thought that maybe this is like my tendency to run. Because I mean, I'm literally relaxing my body. I'm laying on the ground. There's no there's no threats around. There's no nothing. But I'm having these twitches in my legs, and it's just my legs. And so I had this thought, like, am I running? And then it just kind of sent me on this mental journey of all of these thoughts and memories and experiences that I had when I was a child. But I ultimately arrived at the conclusion that, I mean, mentally, I know there's no threats in my life right now. physically that would resemble the kind of threats that were in my life not long ago. Um, and still, my body is responding, my nervous system is responding to, it's still present, in my system, these traumatic events. And I remember listening to, um sorry, I can't attribute this to the person that it goes to, but I've been watching summits, and I believe it was the summit when it was like a bioenergetic summit, and there was a doctor, and she was talking about her healing journey, and she realized that the root of her um, trauma and her health issue was an emotional issue, and then she said that um, trauma is stored in the biofield. Emotional traumas are stored in the biofield. And I think all traumas, I mean, you can have traumas um, that affect you physically, but I think ultimately that physical trauma has an emotional impact. And so at the core of every trauma is an emotional trauma, which would suggest that there's an emotional root of trauma. And if trauma is stored in the biofield, if you're not addressing the biofield, then you're not really addressing your trauma. It's like you're doing body work to a car that doesn't that has a fucked up engine. You know, it looks nice on the outside, but at the core, like, it still has trouble running and it's not firing efficiently and all this. So this idea that I, it's not even like I just put it together in a way that really hit home for me, and I kind of wanted to share. So I had this thought of, and everybody's going to be at different parts of this journey, so it's like you experience trauma, and that trauma has a physiological effect on your material body. And now, if you've addressed the physical component, the material component of your body, you're still you still need to address the energetic component. And if you address the energetic component, then you still need to address the physical component. I think it's a lot easier to address the energetic component first and then iron out the physical component. I think that would be a more preferred approach, and we'll get to why in a second. Uh, but if you're addressing the physical components of your trauma without and completely ignoring the energetic component of your trauma, I think that's where we start. Well, that's one of the reasons why it's so challenging to overcome trauma and addiction, is because there's an energetic component that hasn't been getting a lot of attention, and for various reasons, but it doesn't get a lot of attention. And I mean, honestly, for a lot of people, a lot of this stuff is still woo woo. A lot of this energy talk, people talking about energy, is still woo woo. But the fact is that this is what some of the greatest minds in the world have been talking about for a long time. I mean, we're not just talking about like Einstein and Tesla, but I mean, we're talking about like, this is old stuff. I mean, it goes back to traditional Chinese medicine, which is thousands of years old, um, if not older. And so, with our modern measuring devices, we're able to confirm a lot of these things that these ancient healing methods have been claiming for a long time. So yeah, if you don't address the physical component, it's kind of more of like an uphill battle. And I've been kind of going back and forth as far as what needs to be addressed, and like why is one thing harder than another thing? Why is it hard to uh, why does it take so much willpower to overcome a lot of these things? And I'll use smoking it as an example. Like when you smoke, The nicotine sits in your intestines. So if even if you stop smoking, like say you want to try to stop smoking, if you're not cleaning out the nicotine from inside your system, you're still going to have cravings, um, which is going to require you to use your willpower to overcome this these urges to smoke. You know, and people have done it. People use their willpower all the time to overcome things. I just don't think it needs to be that difficult. And so if you remove that, if you remove the physical component to the smoking, the nicotine, you remove the nicotine from your system, and you're not putting any more in. Um, I think there's still triggers, you know, because it's not like the nicotine in your system is one element or one component of the addictive uh, of the addiction. You know, you still have triggers which are sending signals to to the brain and the body that make you want to smoke. All right, and so when you have so here's what I think is like you experience a trauma, you know, or a trauma is experienced, and in a certain um, you choose a certain behavior to balance out that experience. So you have a trauma and you go through your life making do with the choices that are available to you. And I think a lot of people, well, you know, some people smoke, some people eat, some people drink alcohol, some people, um, you know, hit the weights. Everybody handles this in a different way. But I'm specifically talking about the people who choose to smoke or drink or use drugs or food because there's relationships here between the biofield, your autonomic nervous system, your ego, and the resulting um, takeaway message that your body and your mind get from those signals. So your biofield is pretty much the filter, the energetic filter that all this information gets filtered through. And if your trauma affects your biofield, then without addressing your biofield, you're not really addressing you're not addressing the filter that all this information is coming through. So you can eat right and you can do everything that you need to do to maintain your health. Meanwhile, you're still getting a lot of weird signals through your biofield, which is why I think resetting your biofield is really the starting point of healing trauma and addiction. And so it's the signals that you get from your external environment that mimic the signals of the trauma that you had when you were however many years old. So you had a traumatic experience, all right? Your your brain and your body create like an energy signature for that experience. And as you go through your life, as that energy signature becomes repeated certain patterns of behavior will come up in order to manage those signatures, especially if you're not aware that all of this stuff is going on. You know, like you'll just start smoking, or you'll be predisposed to taking some kind of action behavior that may not be in your best interest overall, but it satisfies you in the moment, and it helps alleviate whatever tension is present from this energy signature that resembles a traumatic experience that you had at some point in the past. So if you don't address your biofield and you address all these other things, health, your physical body, I think it requires more willpower to overcome said trauma and addiction, because your biofield is still sending a signal to your nervous system that something is not right. You know, and I mean, I'll admit this could be nitpicking, but I just don't. It just, why I'm sharing this right now is because I mean we're talking about ease. Like, things don't need to be hard. You know, things don't need to be hard, and if we can develop a way of looking at things that make things easy, then I think that's worth pursuing. So, you know, obviously people overcome addictions all the time, but I do think that, I mean, the reason they get into, or a lot of the reasons why addiction is even a thing, is because trauma is a thing, and that's how people manage their traumas. And then it takes willpower to overcome the trauma. And if you don't have sufficient willpower, then, you know, maybe you don't make it. But if you knew that you could address your biofield and you could repair your biofield, and that would make the rest of the process that much easier, how many more people could we save um, from terminal addictions? You know, um, that die unnecessarily because we're not implementing. You know, because we're not implementing certain strategies that are built on our knowledge of energy. And so I think it's possible, and that's why it takes so much willpower, is because you're still fighting against the signals that you're getting from your biofield. Whereas when you reset your biofield and you retune your biofield, because your biofield is the filter which all this organizing information, you know, energy is information, and so we're getting energy from the cosmos, from the earth, from the sun, and all of this. There's information contained in this energy, and this information is the organizing principle of our bodies. And so if this filter that's around our body is distorted, then the signals, you know, that inherently distorts the relationship that we have to our external environment. And if you're trying to live in a state of peace, and you're constantly getting electrical signals and impulses from your biofield, which is directly connected to your nervous system, that there's something wrong, then you're constantly uh, this state of peace is really elusive, which is why I think it's imperative to include the biofield in this discussion of addressing trauma. And so when I'm doing this breathwork experience and I'm realizing that my leg is twitching, and I'm attributing this leg twitch to these issues that I had in the past, and I'm recognizing that I'm not in a threatening, dangerous environment, you know, I can logically work through what I'm experiencing. And I made this connection that, you know, repairing, I'm ironing out my nervous system when I'm doing this breath work. I'm resetting my nervous system, and the connection that my nervous system has with my biofield, and how important it is to also attune my biofield, which I've been doing by grounding and walking barefoot on the earth um, every day for the last few months for like at least 45 minutes, sometimes up to 2 hours, just depending on how much time I have and how I feel and everything like that. But at least 45 minutes, um, because part of my regimen for addressing my own personal traumas, as well as something fun that I thought would be interesting to try, was sun gazing. And so I did that, and I went through that process. Started out with 10 seconds, and now, I can stare at the sun during sunset hours or sunrise. I prefer sunset, but I stare at the sun for as long as I want, pretty much. Um, Definitely over 45 minutes. Um, I don't stare at the sun so much these days because I spend my more time walking around on the earth and trying to soak up these free electrons from the earth, and just spending time outside in nature. At least that's the protocol that I learned from a man named Hira Ratan Manik, and you can find his information online. Um, but it's been working for me, and so that's been part of the way that I uh, address my biofield, which is an electromagnetic field that is, I say, in large part produced by your heart, because your heart is giving out. Your body has an electromagnetic field, but your heart is an electromagnetic organ, and it's sending electromagnetic impulses um, out and into the field, and it's also receiving information in the same manner. So that's that's literally what your intuition is. Your intuition is essentially your capacity to take subtle energy and turn it into information, meaningful information. And that's how remote viewing is possible, is because you're able to, everything's connected through energy and consciousness. So that's how you can be in New York remote viewing something that's happening in China, and you're going to get accurate information non-locally, because that's just how information works. That's how energy works. Information is encoded in energy, and energy is everywhere. And consciousness travels much faster than the speed of light. So, this idea of healing trauma doesn't have to be so challenging, right? It's just like everything else. I think it's like healing the hunger, healing global poverty, and healing all these and solving all these other problems. These people who are in charge of solving these things, they make them sound like it's just so hard, you know, but it's not. It's really not. It's just, no. They wouldn't have any place in our world if everything if everybody was doing things as easily as possible. You know, you just wouldn't need these people. You wouldn't need these $1 trillion pharmaceutical industries. You wouldn't need $1 trillion um, petrochemical industries. You wouldn't need the oil industry. You wouldn't need there. None of these major industries would exist really in the way that we know them today if people were capable of doing things in the easiest way. And part of that is people also believe that if it's not challenging, then it doesn't, there's some kind of weird value relationship to value that people have. But anyways, I digress. And so, if you're trying to overcome trauma, and you're trying to overcome addiction, and addiction is a result of trauma, largely emotional trauma, then you want to focus on addressing your biofield. I would say that's the place to start, because once you repair your biofield and you establish a a true one-to-one relationship with your environment, then the rest of it is internal. Then you can feel good knowing that it's the next step would be to iron out your nervous system and reset your nervous system and like retrain your nervous system to not be so on edge, because the body learns. And when you have these traumas and these experiences and they go unaddressed for years and years, like, your body just starts learning, and these neural pathways become cemented in your brain and in your body, and it's really challenging to overcome and build new neural pathways. It's not impossible. It's definitely not impossible, but it is challenging, especially when you're doing that in conjunction with trying to heal yourself and eating right and all of these other things. So you reset your biofield, and you kind of give yourself a level playing field from which to begin rebuilding the rest of your body. And the next step after your biofield is going to be resetting your nervous system. You reset your relationship to your external environment, and then you reset the machinery that is interacting with that biofield. And then from there, it's a process of doing the other things right: eating, drinking water, and your mindset. And I think a lot of those things, eating, the food, the nutrition, the hydration, the mindset, a lot of those things are going to become a lot easier after doing those other two things of resetting the biofield and resetting your nervous system. Because if you just focus on eating, right, and it's like, if you want to stop smoking and you just focus on stopping smoking, and so then you just quit smoking, and you don't eat right, you know what I mean? You're not eating right, you're not resetting your nervous system, you're not tuning your biofield. That is going to take a lot of willpower, and that's going to take a lot of effort, and not everybody has that effort. But I think that everybody deserves the opportunity to live a happy, fulfilled life. And I mean, some people would say, oh, that's their choice, is to be an addict. But I mean, was it their choice to be traumatized? I mean, in some level, yeah, I'd say that, like, we're all responsible for the experiences that we have on this planet, and we knew about the possibilities before we came here. So like me and my trauma and my experience, my life experience, like, I knew that a lot of that stuff was a really good possibility before I came down here, but I still chose to be here. So it's like, how much responsibility do you want to take for your life? And so, maybe that sounds contradictory to what I just said, but I don't think it is. I don't think that people, because when we come into this earth body, we get like cosmic amnesia. We don't realize what we are. We don't realize how powerful we are. We don't realize that we just came from another life, whether that was on earth or somewhere else. We don't realize that what we are and how powerful we are. And so I think part of our job down here, at least part of my job, is to help people overcome these kinds of things, because we're all part of the star family, and we're all waking up to our true potential. And so the person who is an addict, that's their way of coping with these traumas. And maybe they don't have the willpower, but if we can take the willpower out of it, how many more happy, functioning, healthy people can we have on this planet that are trying to help other people? That's what I see. And I mean, and not just that. Like, I mean, it's all related. Like addiction. It's like, who are the people who are bringing these drugs into? I'm talking about the United States, but around the world, I think governments are largely the largest peddlers of drugs for the most part, especially the United States government. I mean, these people been flying cocaine into the country, smuggling drugs into the country, selling guns to cartels. So I mean, some people might look at an addict and say, well, that's their choice. They decided, they had those decisions. But I choose to believe that, yeah, that person made a choice, but a lot of other people made that choice really easy. They made that choice really, really easy. And I just think that there's a lot of ways that we can rescue people. It's not about just getting people uh, out of the prison system, the for-profit prison system. It's about helping people. Freedom comes in a variety of ways, you know? And interestingly, it's like you can be free, so-called free, and you're not really free at all, you know? And like most people, and I think, the really big component of this trauma is that with your autonomic nervous system, you have your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. And so your sympathetic nervous system is your fight, flight, freeze. It's your alert system. It's what keeps you alive. It literally is your ego. You know, your sympathetic nervous system is your ego. Your ego protects you, keeps you alive. Oh, don't do this because last time it didn't work out so well. Well, that's what your sympathetic nervous system does. And when you're living in this state, that's when you get chronic illness. You get um, inflammation. A lot of stress. There's a lot of chronic health issues come from being overstressed, which is living in this. It's living with a hyperactive sympathetic nervous system. So literally, the trauma that many of us experience, like it's really hard, if not impossible, I would say, especially because trauma is generational and you can inherit trauma through your family lines. So even if you yourself have never personally experienced trauma, you can inherit it from your parents, who probably inherited it from their parents. And when you think about how many tribal wars and world wars and all these conflicts and things that happen in people's lives, like it's almost impossible to imagine somebody coming through all of that without any kind of trauma. And when you realize that your trauma is what controls you, you realize that that's how you're controlled. That's how they're controlling us. Well, not me, but that's how they control the world, is through trauma and reigniting and pushing these buttons that keep these energy signatures of trauma alive. It's like spinning a plate. They keep spinning the plate of trauma and people keep responding to this stuff. And we keep getting it, just creates more stress, more chronic illness, more worry, more of all of these things that people are pretty much are tired of what I can see. It's exhausting to live on that merry-go-round of emotions. It's really exhausting, and it's deadly. You can die from it. It'll kill you eventually. I mean, you know, that's that's a fact of life down here on Earth, is that we all got to leave at some point. But the quality of your time here, to me is really, it's really important. And so this is, it's not just, I think a lot of people when they hear trauma, they say, "Oh, that's not me. I was never in war. Like I don't have PTSD and all of this kind of stuff." But I don't think they really fully understand the the connection between how their trauma keeps them bound in a on the hamster wheel, and also how the powers that be leverage this information to keep people in control. I mean, it costs money to do research. You know what I mean? It costs money to set up laboratories and conduct research and publish articles and all of this kind of stuff. Like it takes money, and it's I'm. So who are the people who are the people who are doing all this research? You know, who are the people who have all of this knowledge or have created this knowledge base on how the mind works? It's the fucking advertising companies, dude. Advertising companies, like the level of psychological attack on humanity by people who are trying to make a buck is insane. It's insane. When you think about how a little advertisement, the kind of impact that a little advertisement can have on somebody, it's like why should we even have to deal with that shit? Why should we even have to deal with that shit? You know, it's like I'm watching. I'll be watching, tarot on YouTube or like something on YouTube, and then a commercial pops on, and it's like gunfire and explosions and shit, and it's like, bro, what if I was a veteran? Like what if I was a veteran and I had seen combat, and I'm just watching YouTube and I'm chill, I'm in a good place, and then all of a sudden it's like gunfire and fucking explosions going off. It's like these people who are making these commercials, these advertisements, like they're just trying to sell shit. They don't really give a fuck about the impact that it has on people. And then on the other side of the equation, you have people who know exactly what kind of impact this information is going to have on people, and that's why they do it, is so that they can maintain control. A huge component of social engineering is the idea of keeping people in fear. And that's only possible if you have unresolved trauma. And so I know there's people out there, if they come across this and they say, "Oh, another pussy talking about healing your trauma and blah blah blah," and it's like, well, if that's how you feel about it, but at the end of the day, I know that I don't have to pick up a weapon to free myself. you know and if you're stuck in these cycles of trauma, then you think that the only option, you're stuck in like A or B. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I either go along with this shit, or I buy a gun and load up on ammo and I get ready for the end of the world. And it's like, hey, if that's how you want to live your life. But what I'm telling you is that when you get to a place where you are healed, at least healed enough to realize that it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. Meaning, you can create your own reality. You don't need to be resolved to or reduced to these people telling you what your options are, or what the options have been uh, throughout history in the historical record. Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm living here in the now, and I'm creating my reality. I'm creating my future. And maybe there's components that are based on history, but I, in all likelihood, it's going to look a lot different, because I've been able to assimilate all that information into something meaningful and moving forward and being able to integrate that wisdom into my creation versus feeling like I'm reduced to option A or option B. And so I have a feeling that a lot of the people who are saying, who would say that here's this pussy talking about trauma are the same people who have a bunch of guns. And that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like you're still in that trauma mentality. And you can say, "Oh, I'm just being practical," but like I'm saying, when you're when you realize when you realize your true power, you realize that you don't need to fight against anything like that. Because what you resist persists. So that's not the way to go about it. And also, it just reflects a lack of understanding about the infinite nature of the soul. It's like, yeah, nobody wants to die. It's like, I'm not looking forward to dying. I mean, I'm looking forward to dying a happy, fulfilled human being, leaving a legacy and making a positive impact on the world and humanity. But I'm not looking forward to dying until all of those are met. But at the same time, I'm not afraid to die because I know that death is just an illusion. And so I'm not sitting here worried about fucking these FEMA camps and all this other bullshit that people have created to keep this idea of fear. It's like this they're constantly pushing the fear button, and it's like, I'm not stocking up on ammo. I'm not buying guns and all of this other shit. These people are only allowed to do this stuff because most of us are living in an illusion. A trauma-based illusion at that. And so when we heal this trauma, or at least pay enough attention to it to recognize how it impacts us, and yeah, you can use your logic to overcome all of this stuff, and you can use your willpower. But I mean, we're talking about making things easy, and accessible for everybody. These are things this is something that everybody can implement to improve and enhance the quality of their health and the quality of their life. But this is how the world is controlled. The world is controlled through trauma. Traumas are triggers. Triggers are trauma. Your trauma has triggers, and that's what triggers are. Triggers trigger the trauma. That's why a lot of liberal people, they hear shit and it's like, wow, they just start freaking out, and then they just go off, and those are all automatic responses. They're not thinking. They're not like consciously present while they're doing all of this stuff. They're just it's just a freak out moment. Trauma. It's real simple. I'm not saying that we need to baby everybody, but at the same time, we need to extend a certain level of compassion, like a certain standard of compassion to people in the world. Like we don't need to beat up, like, life is hard enough on this planet sometimes, and we don't need to make it hard on each other. You know what I mean? Going through the history of the world and all of this stuff, and if there's one thing that humans have done really well, it's how it's definitely like mistreating each other. And I think we're getting to a point now where a lot more people, we actually have the potential because of things like the internet, the interwebs, we've got this potential for people to link up, and now the majority can actually be represented as the majority. We don't need to depend on these news media conglomerates for information. We can get news from people who are on the ground there, real actual people, human beings without an agenda, or any kind of financial incentive or alternative agenda. Um, Anyways, I digress. Um, but if you stuck with me this far, thanks for watching. But yeah, the biofield is crucial, and I'll be talking more about that. And it's definitely something that you can YouTube. You can look up. Eileen McCusick is an awesome resource for biofield information. Um, yeah, but if you want to work with me, like right now, I am looking for people to work with me to develop shamanic healing abilities. Um, I'm looking for people who would like psychic intuitive readings, even tarot, um, but more so like the shamanic energy, like doing remote shamanic healings and doing intuitive energy sessions, clearing chakra work, and also mediumship. You know, so definitely looking for people who are interested in working with me, uh, so that I can get some practice and keep working on my skills, and hopefully work with like-minded people who could see a benefit or a need or use for these services in their life. Um, yeah. So, anyways, hope you have a great day, and talk to you later. Peace, love.